Clerk, find your seat.
Good evening, Mrs. Trump.
Oh, damn, I think your clock is late.
You think so?
All set? All right. Okay, I'll welcome everybody to the Board of Selectmen meeting on Tuesday, February 28th at 7 p.m. Before we start on our agenda, I'll ask everyone to please rise. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is related to Cumberland Farms. Looks like there was an error on the address of the license. Is that what I'm looking at here?
Correct.
So it was a Scrivener's error basically on the flammable and combustible liquids license. The address was listed as 265, but it's actually 270.
And this is for their underground storage.
Right,
license.
their underground storage for the gas. Are we looking just to simply re-vote with the...
Just revote with the
corrected
correct
address?
Yes.
So it's fairly straightforward. Is there any commentary or discussion, questions for the town manager on this?
So, Mr. Chairman, just to keep the meeting moving along, as we've already bogged down, I'll offer a motion to amend the existing license or change the address on the license to 270 Main Street for the Cumberland Farms flammable and combustible liquids license.
Okay, we have a motion.
We'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to amend the license to correct the address. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. It's unanimous. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the residence portion. Are there any residents in the hall that would like to bring anything forward to the board? Okay, seeing nobody jumping up, we'll move on. So the next item is we have a request from Wamisit Lanes relative to a request to have some early alcohol service. So please come up to the table and state your name for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Steve Bourgeois, Wamisit Lanes. Thank you for putting this on your agenda.
I'm sorry, could you please repeat your name?
Steve Bourgeois, B-O-U-R-G-E-O-I-S.
Thank you.
And so this is for a fundraiser on one Saturday and then a Mother's Day brunch. And
Right.
the goal here is to serve
Same
alcohol
weekend,
a little
right.
earlier than normal.
And the fundraiser consists of an event at Wamisit Lanes starting at 8 o'clock. Probably about better part of 70 people will come and bowl for a couple of hours. At the same time at Trell Brook, another group of about 70 people play 9 holes of golf, and then they just switch.
And then the other is just your typical Mother's Day brunch.
Correct. We'll probably have our first eating at 11 instead of 12.
Colleagues of Mr. Johnson? you have
Mr.
some
Chairman,
questions? Sure.
just a question, refresh my recollection if you can, sir. Did the facility have a Mother's Day brunch last year and the hours were changed? Is that correct?
We did not, so
You didn't change
we were
those.
at 12, right? So that's why we wanted to be a little bit
Some
more.
discussion of that. You didn't make a formal request?
Right.
Okay. I was curious how it went, if that in fact was the case. Okay. Thank you. Nothing else.
Mrs. Strauss?
I did get the agenda early, but I didn't get a chance to look on the website for Troops Direct, so I was just curious what that fundraiser was. It's a good
Sure.
opportunity to kind of...
Actually, if I can, I went on their website and kind of given you an idea of what they do. Basically, they provide supplies, all kinds of things to actual troops that are deployed, that could be waiting for, equipment or generators or things like that. They seem to do everything within 72 hours of when they committed to fill something. So it's basically a supply thing for troops, from what I can see on their website today anyway.
Thank you. I think that's great.
Anybody else have any?
I already looked that up.
Yep, thank you.
David, any?
No questions, I can.
My only question is you've got two groups basically gonna shift between the two locations.
Correct.
And we're starting service at 8 AM. I presume there's some control there as far as worrying about people getting too excited while they're
Yeah,
bowling
I
and then
mean-
heading to the golf course.
Yep, the plans to bus people from the locations, and I had a conversation with someone from the Tewksbury Police Department today about the event, and went through it with that person, and basically, we'll have our own security there that morning, and they seem to be, okay.
Yeah, I'll note that we did receive an email from Public Safety today, is that right? Richard, I believe it came through, that they were signing off on this as well. So, any other questions or comments?
Just a comment, I guess. I'm assuming that the facility has, tip certified staff in the bar area, and to my knowledge, I don't believe in the time they've been open we've had any issues or concerns. So, to management's credit, and hopefully the patrons that go there, people seem to enjoy themselves, but within the bounds of reason. So, I'm happy to support both of these requests if someone puts a motion for us.
So I'll entertain any motion relative to the two requests. We can take them individually or as a slate if people are comfortable with that.
I'll make a motion to approve both the May 13th Troops Direct event and the May 14th Mother's Day brunch event starting at 11 a.m. and the other one starting at 8 a.m.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Saturday, May 13th event starting at 8 a.m. and the Sunday, May 14th event starting at 11 a.m. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. That's unanimous. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with the events. Right. So the next item on the agenda is a common victualler license for an new ice cream location where I believe where the previous Orange Leaf was. Is that correct?
I think so.
Called All You Need Is Ice Cream. Seems a fairly truthful title for the business. Any questions or discussion relative to this? If not, I'll entertain any motions relative to the request.
I'll move that as a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the license. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the common victualler license for All You Need Is Ice Cream, located at 345 Main Street, Unit 1. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Moving right along. Okay, so the next, we all received a letter that was from Mary Jo Nispel to Chief Sheehan. This was relative to a RAD class that had been held at for a number of women from the Tewksbury Gun Club, the Garden Club, and the Senior Center. And this was a letter thanking them for that, and then also a small donation in the amount of $100, and this is simply to accept that donation, correct?
Yes, if the board can accept the gift and to place it in the gift account to be spent on defraying the cost of RAD classes.
Any discussion or commentary relative to that? If not, motion relative to the donation?
I'll make a motion to accept the gift and send a thank you to the grantees for providing that. And what account would this go in, Richard?
We have a gift account that the town accountant has set up, because
To
we've
the gift
received.
account. Sorry, I should have asked that first.
So a motion to accept the donation with thanks and place it in a gift account for use to support similar programs in the future. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I may, just a
Please.
follow-up question for the town manager. if I recall correctly, we've had at least 2 or 3 of these donations in the last year or so.
I seem to remember the
So,
same.
yeah, that's triggered my recollection. So I'm just curious if maybe there's, in the big picture, another way to address this that benefits parties. It's pretty clear people are pleased with the program, and if there's another way to maybe defray some costs, or maybe a grant we could pursue, or, you know, some methodology where we're not necessarily reliant on the generosity of residents to help support that. I appreciate the donation, and I think, you know, I know the monies will go to an excellent cause, but I'm just trying to think maybe bigger picture about it. If we're getting $100 donations in 2 or 3 or 4 a year, then maybe there's a different way we can look at it.
Yeah, I think we already do receive grant funding for some of these classes, plus the police budget supports it, so, but we can look at further opportunities. I think this is mostly residents who've gone through it and are so happy about the class that they took and the instructors that they just want to give a donation to help with future. These donations aren't the reason, they're not supporting the actual. We don't, you know, if we don't get the donations, we wouldn't stop the classes. We're doing the classes.
Is it possible then maybe to, so that people don't have to donate it that way, that we did a fee, nominal fee, and they could waive it if, I mean,
I can ask the chief for some ideas.
'cause otherwise we'd have to keep accepting.
We'll look at further grants and other opportunities, and
The classes don't cost anything, right?
I don't
No,
believe they do.
free.
I think they're free.
And so currently, the classes are supported by either grant money and/or the police budget. There's no issue with resources for the classes. This is really just somebody who participated, was very happy with it, and wanted to give back.
Yep.
And as you said, I know I do recognize the name. I believe the same individual gave last year about the same time.
Yep, it's much appreciated.
Yeah, so,
So I can get some more information from the chief.
Something to think about. It's another way to do it.
absolutely. Okay. So the next item on our agenda, we all remember we had a resignation from the Zoning Board of Appeals. And that, on that committee, on that board, there was an associate member. And so we reached out to that associate member, Diane Bartolomea, sorry. And I understand she's interested in becoming full member. And so we had decided not to, of course, entertain committee appointments again until the spring, but given this particular board is a 3-membered board of full members and obviously has a lot of work to do, we talked about it, I believe, last meeting or 2 meetings ago, that we would reconsider this. So if there's any discussion or questions about Mrs. Bartolomea's nomination or position, potential position on the board. Otherwise, a motion relative to appointment to full member.
I'll make a motion to appoint Diane Bartolomea as a full member of the ZBA.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to second that, just for the benefit of folks who may not recall her name as they listen to our meeting. When Mrs. Bartolomea, or I should say Attorney Bartolomea, applied to be an associate member back in 2014, she indicated that she lived here in Tewksbury for 25 years. She has planning and conservation department experience with the town for 3 or 4 years, and was an attendee at both Planning Board and Conservation Commission meetings, so she gained some awareness of the open meeting process and obviously some of the zoning requirements through the Planning Board. And I think that's important to note. And in addition, in her employment and profession as an attorney, she's involved with land use regulations. So all, related to the area of zoning, and certainly I think that's probably what drove us to appoint her as an associate to begin with, but worth reminding residents who may have
The qualifications.
Agreed. So I think I started to second the motion, and I would remind my colleagues that I will do that right now.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to appoint Ms. Bartolomea to a full member of the ZBA. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Okay, so we're going to move on to the town manager section of the meeting. I'm going to have us move up the 1057 South Street item to the top because the deed relative to this property is, or was executed with Tewksbury Habitat Build. As I have in the past, I'm a board member of that charitable organization, and I will recuse myself from any matters relative to that. So I will turn the meeting over to our vice chair, and he can choose to let me back in when that matter is settled, or he could choose not to, I suppose.
Okay. So the confirmatory deed that the board needs to approve is for 1057 South Street, which is being sold to the Tewksbury Habitat Build, Inc. When the original deed was put together by council, they forgot to include the word Inc. at the end. So this is a confirmatory deed adding Inc. to the end of Tewksbury Habitat Build. So I need each of the board members to sign on their signature page, which is attached. And if you can do it now, then I can get this to Janine and have it notarized and have it submitted, so the board can approve the new confirmatory deed.
Do you need a motion on that?
Go ahead, David.
I'll make a motion to approve the correction on the deed as to add the word Inc. as part of the title of the deed.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on this item. All in favor, please vote aye.
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 Okay. Let the record state that we have a record of 4-0, and Bruce recused himself from this item. Now we can call him back in if we have no other matters.
Okay. There's just one page for each of us?
There's one page for each person to sign, yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll jump back up to item number 7, town council invoices.
Yes, we have two town council invoices to approve from Faley and Brown. The first is through January 31st, January 16th through the 31st, in the amount of $2,040, and I'd recommend the board approve.
Okay, any discussion relative to that? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion relative to the town council invoice for the second half of January.
I'll make a motion to approve the invoice from general counsel from January 16th to January 31st, 2017, in the amount of $2,040.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to accept the invoice as stated. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. And we have a second
And
one.
the second invoice is from February 1st to February 15th, in the amount of $1,956.70, and I'd recommend the board approval.
I'll make a motion to approve invoices for general counsel February 1st through 15th for $1,956.70 as presented.
We hear a second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second to approve the invoice as presented in the amount of $1,956.70. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Okay. Skipping down to local housing partnership.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the past several months, we've been working on restructuring the local housing partnership. We've had trouble gaining a quorum for the meetings when they've been held over the last 6 months. The current structure of the committee is made up of 3 residents, actually 5 residents, a Conservation Commission representative, and a Housing Authority representative. We have a non-voting member of the Board of Selectmen appointed to the committee, a non-voting Planning Board member appointed to the committee, a non-voting School Committee member appointed to the committee, and a non-voting member of the Board of Health. So it's a large committee. We get high attendance from a few of the members, but not all of them. So in reviewing the structure with the Assistant Town Manager, we're recommending that the committee be restructured to 5 members, and with a selectman as an alternate member who would fill in in case a member is missing and a quorum is needed. We'd recommend that 2 residents be appointed to the committee, a member of the Planning Board be on the committee, a member of the Conservation Committee be on the committee, and a member of the Housing Authority or the Housing Authority Director, whichever is chosen by the Housing Authority, be on the committee. And again, continue to have a selectman be a member, but an alternate member, again, to fill in when a member is missing, which would help if a quorum is an issue for any of the evenings. The only issue with the selectmen that needs to be mentioned up front, if there is a vote of the committee to recommend using the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for an affordable housing project, the board member, if they are part of the voting membership that night, should recuse themselves, because the selectmen would have to come back to a board meeting and vote here as a board member. So that's the only issue there, and that should be rare. So this brings the membership down to 5. It keeps the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and Housing Authority involved as voting members, and it reduces the residents from 5 to 2 on the committee. Currently, there are 3 residents appointed to the committee. There are 2 vacancies. One of them has a high attendance rate, and the other 2 have a low attendance rate. So if the board approves restructuring tonight, I would ask that they appoint the resident with the high attendance and ask one of the other 2 if they're still interested in being on the committee, and they can apply for the board for a future date. This will allow us to have enough for a quorum for a meeting in the next couple of weeks, because I know Steve Sadek would like to get them together and start meeting again.
Any questions for discussion? Mrs. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, first of all, would just like to say I really appreciate the work that the Assistant Town Manager has done on this, and I know that he has had conversations with the chairman of the Affordable Housing. Has he signed off on this?
Yes, he spoke to him today, and he said, as long as it's legal, he's fine with it.
Okay.
It's always a good
It's always a good question to ask. So yes, he's all set.
And the other thing that I would just like to mention is, while this committee has not met in several months, 6 months you mentioned,
Yeah.
This is a very important committee because they are the people that do address the affordable housing. That's their primary function, and I think it is something that we as a town need to be taking a look at and keeping those numbers in a place where we're all comfortable with. And so I really appreciate the work on that. The other thing is, the member with the high attendance, are you asking that we appoint that member tonight, or, so how do we?
If you could, I mean, she's already appointed to the committee. I would, I guess I would approach it as a reappointment to the committee, because I know she's interested and she's
Yep.
Once they get a meeting together. And then for the other vacancy for the resident position, I would just ask the other two members if they're, either one of them are interested in filling it, and if they are, they can send a letter to the board. And if neither one of them want to, then you can advertise it from there.
They were at some point appointed to a term that would close out on a date certain, and I don't have the names in front of me with the dates. So would we theoretically have to either disband the committee and reform the committee? That might be the cleanest, or do we remove them? I don't think we can simply do that by a vote. There has to usually be a process, I think.
So can I make a suggestion, because I think that this is really important discussion, and maybe if we put this out to the housing authority, to the committee, we can get a meeting with the people and at least get a quorum for this meeting, and then have them come back, and maybe it could all be resolved without it, because two of the positions are vacant, and maybe we could talk to the committee as a group. What do you think about that?
Yeah,
And then come back to this group to have the
just
reconfiguration?
Just thinking it through, you could have, you could not do anything with the residents.
Right.
You have a quorum with the remaining members, and then open it up to residents who are interested in applying.
Yeah, my concern is, though, that we are then leaving 3 members where there are 2. If we vote to redo the committee, there's only 2 resident slots.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we're putting one of those residents in a designated slot, which they're not a member of those boards, so they can't fulfill that role. Does that make sense?
I think so.
If we, I would like to make a motion to bring the committee down to 5, which would be the 2 vacancies. We're gonna have the same problem again, even if we did that with the 3 people, because the planning board, which is the member that we're adding, is new. So that's what will give us the quorum. So that's why I'm asking if I could just have until the next meeting to see if I can get the group together to have a meeting, so that we can talk about it as a group. And we may end up having one of those people resign if they know that this is where we're going. Because I don't think we brought this to the committee itself. That's why I was asking about
So
the
we're
chairman.
looking then, you're suggesting essentially a 2-step process where we first reduce the committee by 2 resident members, not change the structure otherwise. With what you have remaining, have a quorum, have a meeting, and then come
And
back,
then have
and
them
then
recommend
have a
the
second
restructure.
vote to restructure, add the planning board member? Because that's the only major
That's the only major change.
change.
And the Board of Selectmen being
An
a alternate
alternate.
vote, which is also important.
And just so you know, the, one of the residents' term ends on June 30th of 17, and 2 of them end on June 30th of 18.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of
Mr. Johnson?
questions.
Yep.
We're governed, I think, by statute in some of this area with respect to the length of term. Are they 3-year terms?
Everybody's been a 3-year term, yeah. Well, actually, some have been 2-year terms, so it may vary,
Vacancies?
yeah.
And there's no other statutory structural requirement?
No,
It's left to local decision?
yeah, there wasn't a lot of guidance on this from the state. It was really it's up to the, towns do a variety of things. Some towns have the selectmen have acted as the local housing partnership, others, everyone does it different. So it's really up to us.
So I appreciate what Mrs. Stronach's trying to get to, and I understand and support the overarching goal, but I do have a little bit of a concern. It's not gonna give me, heartburn that I'm awake all night, but to do it in 2 steps, to me, looks like we're engineering a vote. If I were a resident who wasn't paying attention and I see a meeting that we just voted to reduce the composition of the board, and then there's gonna be a meeting to come back in and then have another vote, to me, we're trying to get to an end game that may not necessarily look the best. And I think the goal is right, but I'd rather do it in one sweep and either have the current committee come to the table, which, you know,
Agreed.
I'd like to think that would be possible, but the reason we're talking about this to begin with is that people haven't had some difficulty getting to a meeting. But if we can get everyone in the room and then take the vote to either resign as individual or have the committee basically disband itself, then that changes the complexion of that discussion. And then you can come back, in my mind, and, you know, adopt the structure that the town manager's put forth if everyone's in agreement. But to sort of play games with that, and no disrespect intended, I just think from the outside looking in, it's a lot different than from this side of the table looking out.
So I just want to make it clear, the reason I am stating that is because there are 2 vacant residence positions, and if we move the committee from 7 to 5, that will get us the quorum, because the problem is we have 2 vacancies that always create the problem. So if we get the committee itself, because there's 2 vacancies that we haven't been able to fill, and we haven't been able to fill them for, I think, 2 years, they've been open, according to one of the members who's pretty active in this, that will get us to a quorum of the people who go. So that's why I am suggesting that. And I would like to, I hear what you're saying about the engineering, but the problem that we don't have a quorum is because it's a 7 members, not 5. And there's 5, so that's the issue. But I would commit to calling all of those 5 people before we had our next meeting, because I don't think that they are all aware of what we're doing. And I think that that's important to give them the opportunity to make that decision. And to your point, one of them, their term ends in June, and that's really not fair because we're cutting them off at the knees.
Any of the above. You could eliminate the 2 resident vacant positions, and you're down to 5. We'll go from there.
So, I mean, to me, there's 2 choices. There's either what Mrs. Stronach is suggesting, or we do a clean break, vote to essentially disband the committee and reform the committee and appoint the people that show up. Either way, I think, gets us to where we want to be, which is a quorum, that they can meet and actually do something. And so we've added members to committees. We've added members to the EDC, to the public events. And so to remove non-active members or non-active slots to this particular committee, I mean, unless anybody has, with the current concerns noted.
Let me offer one kind of middle of the road path here. We meet again in 2 weeks. If the board were to ask the town manager, in this case perhaps the assistant town manager, to write to each of these members tomorrow, indicate the board's intention is to reform the committee and solicit either resignations formally or advance a case, if you're a current sitting member, as to why the proposed course of action is not appropriate for us to consider, and put a firm deadline of, you know, the Friday before our next meeting. And if there's no response, no action, you know, crickets, then this board can take the action that this board deems appropriate. And if some information is presented to us to cause us to slow that process down, then we can reconsider, you know, the timing of it. I think the overarching goal, I think, I'm certainly in agreement with, but
Yeah, I think we're all the same
I
place.
think it just, we need to be cautious about, you know, taking a 3-year term that someone's been appointed to, and that is an active participant, and turning that upside down, and that would concern me. If you've volunteered and you've been committed to it, you know, all of a sudden the rules are changing.
That's my-
Certainly concerning, so I've heard others say that, and I appreciate that. If you haven't been involved and there's a vacancy, obviously that's a totally different picture.
Can do that.
If we just communicate to the members and force some form of an answer or response by a deadline, and silence means acceptance,
Right.
then we can come back here in 2 weeks, and if the end result is the committee's reformed on the 14th, if there's a need for a meeting, you can schedule that shortly thereafter.
And just for the record, we currently have a member that, from Conservation and from Housing Authority that attend.
Yes, the regular.
Planning Board is a new addition.
They were a non-voting member.
They're non-voting
Voting
member.
member, okay.
They also attend,
Okay.
but they're not voting,
But they can't vote, so it
that's
doesn't help with the
issue.
quorum. Okay, good.
Exactly.
All right, because my question was, do
Yep.
we have somebody waiting from the Planning
Yep,
Board to become a
we
full
do.
member? So we do.
Yeah. Well, and the question would be, should the planning board have the ability to alter that person? I don't even know who it is, but if you're going from non-voting to voting, if you're reconstituting, is that person automatically grandfathered in, or is that person, does the planning board designate another person? Maybe the same person, but
Right.
is that their choice, or are we saying that it's the existing?
Well, if we're gonna do all the committee members, it should be done the same way.
Yeah. So we should-
So I would agree with that, and I'm happy with that approach. I just don't want to have members not know what we're doing, that's all.
We'll send a letter out tomorrow.
So I'm not sure that we need a vote
We do
necessarily on
not.
this, but if we can, through perhaps the Assistant Town Manager, contact the current members of this, the Local Housing Partnership, including the Planning Board member, to discuss the potential of becoming a full member, and that we will take action on it on the 14th, and lack of response indicates they are A-okay with our intent. Is everybody comfortable with that?
I think that's
I
great.
believe there's a planning board meeting scheduled for next Monday also, so we would
Yes.
have the time in between, so.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd ask just to amend the letter a little bit, to specifically as it relates to the residents, the 3 active residents, to make it clear to them that if the change is adopted as we've discussed, that there's only 2 seats at the table.
Right.
So they need to be asked specifically if they want to continue, or they have any intention they want to resign. But we need to know that.
And one thing more to add to that is just to confirm that there's no statutory limitations or requirements based on, is it, we've been doing 3-year terms because we were doing 3-year terms, or is it statutory? Because most of our other committees, we tend to do 1-year terms.
Yeah, I'll double check the terms.
And so we should understand that going into it as well.
From what I saw, some are 1, some are 2, some are...
Yeah, and just so you know, there was guidance that the Assistant Town Manager sent, and it was very vague,
Okay.
very vague.
So we should at least review that so we're on solid ground when we make the change.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but to your point, Mr. Chairman, if this committee's had quorum issues, it's one reason why we went to having annualized appointments. If folks get appointed for a 3-year term and they don't participate for various reasons, some are well beyond their control, it would allow the community to still get its business done if every 12 months the Board of Selectmen has the right to replace you. And that was part of the underpinnings of why we took more active involvement and created a lot of these 1-year positions. So if the statute allows that flexibility, I'd actually advocate that we reduce this from a 3-year term to a 1-year term to reserve that right. Doesn't mean in 12 months that we would pick other people, but we have the ability to do that if it's necessary.
It also suits the fact that we have elected officials on there, that every year one of them could be going off and we have to replace them anyway, so.
Point. Yep.
I would agree, but we'll, I think, take the question of term length. I think maybe if we have additional information from Mr. Sadwick with the feedback from the members, I think we have another action item for the 14th.
Sounds good. We'll get the letters out.
All right, thank you. And then the last item under yours, this was relative to the ballot questions that we all voted to put on the April ballot relative to the 3 capital projects.
Correct.
And the senior town council was to review them, and there were some minor changes?
Yes, Senior Town Council, Charles Arulis, reviewed them. He made some changes. I'll just go through them quickly. To ballot question 1, he added a comma after Woodland Drive. In ballot question 2, he spelt out, I had originally put in DPW, he spelt out Department of Public Works. And in question 3, he added a comma after Pleasant Street and after Dewey Street. The changes were added or incorporated into the ballot questions. The ballot questions were sent to the town clerk with an attached memorandum indicating that the board had voted to place them on the ballot for the local election. The ballot's been developed. A proof was given to me this week to review, and it's all set to go. So last night was the last chance for someone to withdraw their names from the election, so the ballot is locked in, and it's going to the printer. So in regard to the ballot questions, we're going to start having public meetings in regard to each of the projects. At the next board meeting, it's my intention to make a presentation on water and sewer rates and the capital budget in general. And then specifically, we'll have a separate presentation on each of the projects. So that'll be on the 14th. And then for each week after that, we'll have a public meeting up until the election on the projects for residents to come and ask any questions on the projects.
Okay. Any questions or discussion relative to that?
I do have a question.
Mrs. Stronach?
When we voted on this, first of all, thank you for that, I appreciate that information. When we voted on this, one of the comments that we made is that these ballot questions were designed similar to how they were for the high school. And I then got a question asking if, when we voted on the high school, if we had gone to ballot and then went to town meeting, which I believe is my recollection, but I don't know that for sure. But I do believe that is the case, and when you come back, if we could just confirm that. But I do believe it was the case that we
I believe that was
went
the
to the
case.
ballot and then we got it approved at town meeting.
I believe
So
that
I
was the
just
case.
want to make sure that when we were saying that it followed the same, that we were talking about both of those things.
When I was talking about that particular night was the question itself, how it was worded.
Exactly.
Just to let people know, because I didn't want anybody to think we were changing wording from question to question for our debt exclusions. But I believe we went to a special election for the high school, and then we had a town meeting after that. But I'll double check.
That would be great, thank you.
Any other comments on the ballot questions? Okay, Mr. Montori, anything else?
No, that is it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is minutes from previous meetings. I'll turn to our clerk, Mrs. Stronach.
So I am only going to present the minutes that are in our packet, which are the minutes of January 24th, 2017, and I will have the February 7th minutes in the next packet published in the next agenda.
All right, everybody received these. Any questions or discussion? Otherwise, I'll take that in the motion of...
I'm sorry, that is a motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes from January 24th regular session. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. And then the next item is our board member reports. So-
Actually, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before you leave the subject of minutes, I know Mrs. Stronach has indicated she'll present the February 7 meeting minutes next meeting, but before we do that, I know the minutes, the drafts were shared with the selectmen, and I did pick up on a slight change that I want to make relative to a board report that I spoke to, and it's really more for clarification's sake. It may have been some inartful wording that I used, but it pertains to the zoning bylaw process review committee, and the way that the minutes are recorded, it's indicating that information will be presented back to the committee. The earliest this information could be turned around would be the fall of 2017. While that's pretty close to my recollection of the conversation, what I want to stress, and I think the minutes, I'd like to ask that the minutes be modified to reflect that the intention of the zoning bylaw process review committee is to present the output at the October 2017 meeting, and that's a very tight timeline. So it's not guaranteed, and I think what got reflected in the minutes is probably my garbling up the wording to state that, but just for clarity's sake, if we could just correct that section to reflect that the target of the committee is October fall,
The October
fall
special town meeting.
Yeah, in 2017. And, you know, that's a challenge for the committee, and it's not guaranteed, but that's what we're striving for. So not an error,
Happy to.
probably the way that I phrased it or something, but I'd like to, just for clarity's sake, make sure that that's out there.
And that's one of the reasons why. I just want to give people enough time to make comments and things like that, and then publish them in the agenda so that people can read them ahead of time. I think that's important, so I'll have you review, I'll
Yeah, if you don't mind.
revise and review.
You get it corrected?
Yep.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate
Absolutely.
the courtesy.
No problem.
Anything else on the minutes? All right, seeing nothing, I'll turn to my right for board member reports.
The beautification and the economic development have not met since the last meeting we've had, so I really have nothing to report this meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mrs. Stronach?
So finally, February 15th, we actually did go to MSBA, and we're all signed, sealed, and delivered in this next project. It seems like we've been talking about it. Fortunately for us, doing a lot of that prep work is going to help us, because now the clock starts ticking, and we have 260 days to get all of the things that we need to do to the MSBA, which is similar to the zoning bylaw, quite a feat trying to get those things all in. So the next order of business is going to be discussed on March 8th. That's correct, right? March 8th?
9th.
Okay. March 9th, and it is in this building, so I just want to make people aware of that, but we're going to really be ramping up, so there's going to be a lot of work on this committee, and our first order of business will be getting our project manager on board, and that will help us get the architect, so really exciting. We talked about the local housing. I also just wanted to mention that the town manager and Selectman Crapman went down and showed their appreciation to the DPW workers for all the hard work that they've done. As you know, at the beginning of February, we had, I think, 6 straight days of snow, and I just want to thank Mark for showing his gratitude and presenting on the rest of us for that, because he is right. That's you know, while people are like, oh, that's your job, it's still, it's a very difficult and challenging job, so thank you for doing that, and to the town manager for going down and passing on the residents' gratitude as well. And then, lastly, and I did speak to the town manager about this, Lowell is building a high school, and I believe we all got a letter from a resident expressing some concerns about that. I have asked the town manager and want to make sure that that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, that we actually get information, because when I talked to this resident, he alluded to the fact that he has been to some of these meetings, and he believes that some of the work that's being done in the parking lot is actually on Tewksbury property. But the town manager said nobody from Lowell has actually came forward to us. So I had asked if he get that information, and if there is things that we should be aware of because of that project, maybe we could have a voice and express whatever it is we need to do for that.
Yeah, perhaps we can reach out directly to Lowell to get a sense as to potential impacts.
The assistant town manager was going to contact the planning department to see what
Yeah,
the situation is.
and, you know, again, it's just to find out what is the situation, so.
As I understand it, they're still deciding on a location. Colley Stadium is one of
No definite
the locations.
So, but if it does impact us, I would like to have
Absolutely.
a say at the table before something is decided.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one item. At last week's Lowell Regional Transit Authority meeting, I spoke to the administrator, Jim Scanlon, about putting a bench at the bus stop in front of Oakdale Plaza. I noticed a couple of times a shopping cart tipped over where people were sitting on a bench and people sitting holding their groceries, and they looked like they're forlorn people waiting for a bus that gets home. So he said he would look at it and probably put a bench there, and I was going to take a look up and down the route to see if there's any other places that made sense to put a bench along that bus route, because I think it would be well worth it to have a couple of benches there for people to sit there instead of tipping over shopping carts and trying to find a seat. So that's about all I have tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I make I'm sorry, just on the comment on that, David, since you are going to be reaching out to them, I
Yep.
did receive a couple of complaints from residents. There's a picnic bench that is strapped to a pole in front of the car dealership down across from Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's on private property, but they did come to me and say that's an eyesore. A lot of people from the beautification committee weren't happy with it, the way it was. You know, somebody took a picnic bench and literally chained it to a pole in front of a bus stop. So
Okay.
it is out there. I don't think it's on town property. I don't think it's on state property. I think it's on private property. So I don't really think we have any say in that.
Well,
But if we were to look into adding a bench down there, maybe they would remove that.
Right,
So,
I think that's, if it's a bus stop and it's used as a seat for a bus stop, I think the Lowell Regional Transit Authority.
My guess is that the car dealership may have put that down there so people aren't sitting on their vehicles. But it is there. I did drive down there. I did see it. And it's off to the right. It seems to be on private property. But if they're going out of their way to put a bench out there already, I'm guessing there probably is a need for that one.
That's fine, I'll send an email to the administrator, Jim Scanlon, and let him know that.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Mr. Johnson, where would you like to put a bench?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just through you to the town manager, just a question tonight on where you or we are at relative to the budget process. You've had some meetings with the Finance Committee, and just to further elaborate on that, any additional information that you're hearing from, Beacon Hill or Massachusetts municipal sources that would potentially have an impact, pro or con, on our budget?
I mean, the budget process is going well. The Finance Committee's been meeting every Wednesday. They're meeting tomorrow night with to go over general government budgets, town clerk and the finance department budgets. So things are going along well. Departments have done a good job at presenting their budgets. The Finance Committee's done a good job reviewing the budgets. Since the governor presented his budget, which increased local aid to the town, but also increased our state and county assessments, I've heard nothing from the State House. I'm not sure if the House has a date of when they'll be submitting their budget, but usually comes out sometime in the next 30 days, and then the Senate will get it after that. So things seem to be going well. I can't speak from the Finance Committee standpoint, but all the meetings have gone well.
And relative to the current year, fiscal year budget, have you had any further feedback on potential 9C cuts or anything?
I haven't heard any more about 9C cuts. I think there were some cuts made. Nothing seemed to impact us for this fiscal year. Some of the areas I thought that would be cut weren't. So I haven't heard any more that adjustments will be made and that revenues are concerning. So the budget looks, good going into the end of the fiscal year.
And my last question in the finance realm would be, do you have any sense where we stand in our snow and ice picture as we sit here? We had the benefit of some unusually warm weather, so hopefully that's helped our cause a little bit. And of course, there's no guarantees, but
I mean, obviously, we're happy to see the weather improve. I don't want to say we're out of the woods yet, but we're projecting to utilize the entire $600,000 that we set aside in free cash just towards snow and ice, and then beyond that, we're projecting at the moment another $125,000 deficit. So the total deficit for snow and ice will be somewhere around $725,000. We'll need to, we're in the process of trying to determine where the additional 125 will come from between now and town meeting, but we think we'll have a good handle on all of it.
And I might be getting rusty, but is there a placeholder number in the budget of like 200,000, or is that outdated at this point? The 600 we put in.
The 600 is set
special.
aside, the 600 we do at the special, and there's a budget of $256,000 a year for
So
snow and
when you
ice.
talk about a deficit, we've
It's a-
exhausted the 256
Yeah.
and potentially the 600 that
Mhm.
we've set aside.
Correct.
So you're well over 850
Yeah,
plus another 100.
we're close to $1 million, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Mhm.
And it's been a relatively mild winter.
It's relatively mild compared to a few years ago, I guess, but it's still, we had a, 2 or 3 week period there that it was just nonstop.
Right.
Just nonstop. Staff was going, well over 24 hours, and what we had a lot of this year, and I'm sure Mr. Crabman can agree with me, a lot of sanding and salting operations. We had, when the storms came, they were big, but on the off storm times, we had a lot of calls in for sanding, salting because of the melting and the freezing, and then when the snow came, it came at times that just impacted the overtime and the need to bring contractors in. And we can have a lot of storms in a given year, but that doesn't mean we call our contractors in and our staff can handle it. But this year were storms and we needed to bring everybody in.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, and then one last question. We talked about the process in the last few meetings of the roadway speed limits and how we're working our way through that process. Any issues that have come from that relative to, auto accidents or concerns that the police department has developed over certain sections of town, or anything that
no,
is a concern at the
I
moment?
haven't heard of any motor vehicle issues as far as accidents are concerned. I haven't heard of any issues in the police department. Some residents have raised concerns and questions. We're in the process of doing the studies that we need to in regard to those roads. We decided not to bring back the warrant articles at this town meeting. We discussed it internally and felt that we were better off bringing them back in the fall after we have the studies done, so we can show the people that we've done the work, have the information, and that we're just not bringing these articles forward without any concrete data to show them what we've done. So, it's been a learning experience for the residents, and but I think in the end they'll appreciate the work that was done.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I have a few items. Since our last meeting, this time of year, all of the youth basketball, both boys and girls, are having their playoffs coming up. So we have probably 1,500 to 2,000 boys and girls that participate, and they're all going into their playoffs in the next week or two. So just wishing them luck as they face off on neighborhood towns. Also on Friday the 10th, the high school is having their trivia night at the country club. And last I heard, there were a few tables left. Those are usually hard to get, so people should take that opportunity if they can. It's always a good event and a good cause, of course. More formal activities, the Town Center Master Plan Committee we're looking at 2 dates, but right now it looks like we're going to settle on Monday the 13th of March. We have received our essentially final draft of our final report for the Town Center Master Plan. The committee will review that, and then as part of some of the public presentations that the town manager mentioned, the Town Center Master Plan Committee will participate in those to bring a little more detail to the Town Center project as one of those 3 capital projects that are coming forward as a ballot question. So the committee will review that final draft. They all have it in hand, but have not had a chance to meet yet to discuss that. So we'll be doing that just before our next meeting. And then finally, I'd like to point out to residents that on Thursday, the 9th of March, here in this room, the Cable Advisory Committee, which we formed a little over a year ago, at this point has been hard at work, and they're now ready to ask for some more public input, and so they're having a public visioning workshop for community public access. And so obviously everybody is encouraged to come out here, participate, tell the committee what you are hoping for in our cable public access. And I know that they've been very hard at work, so it'll be great to hear what the public has to say about that topic, which we've dealt with at the budget level, of course, by removing the cable fees from our operating budget. So other than that, I don't have anything else unless anybody else has any comments.
Just
Mr.
to
Mount?
follow up on a question that was asked earlier. In regard to the school debt exclusion, there was an election, there was a town meeting on March 1st of 2010, and there was an election on March 10th. So
They were back to back.
yeah, they're back to back. So, but again, when I spoke last meeting, I was not speaking to the process, so if someone thought I was not.
I was clear on that when
Yeah,
I was making my vote.
I was just
They
speaking
were-
about the
Somebody
the
asked
language.
me asked the question, and I said we were talking about the vote, but that,
And just
I
as
knew
a
they
side
were
note, for the since I've been here, the other debt exclusions, the sewer shift of 50% of the debt, we had the
Yep.
ballot question first, then town meeting. And
Yep.
when we had the unsuccessful ballot question on the field, we had the election first, and then would have gone to town meeting. So,
I
any-
remember the processes.
There's no requirement to order.
No.
We have to pass through both gates.
Right,
All right,
Just
thank
wanted
you
to
for
bring that up.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Added information.
Very good.
And with that, unless there's anything else, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. We are adjourned at 8:03. Thank you, everybody.
Family.